this meeting to order, please. Would you all please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming. For us here at the table, our goal this evening is to, when adjourned, to allow Dr. Brown to go off and create the articles that our good friend Ms. Bells will get to read at the April meeting, because she's falls to the newbie. So at the April meeting, then there'll be no, what if we do $5 here, or if we do $10? None of that at the April meeting. We'll get all of that done this evening. Yes?
Turn on your mic.
Thank you. I've gotten it now from 3 people.
I will now turn on my mic, because I know with my Jim voice, I do not project well, so that none of you heard me when I made that announcement. Okay. So, call to order. We did that, and everybody's here except for Kenna is scooping. So she's, again, working to get her start on her first $1 million. And we have on the agenda first, reconsideration of the FY 2020 school calendar. Take it away, Superintendent Brown.
Thank you very much, Chairman Dyer. There was a memo in your packet, and the memo spoke to changes I recommend for the 1920 school calendar. That's the year that we are in. And I think, as everyone is aware, we have a rapidly developing situation worldwide, and it has impacted us. So I am recommending the following: that the early release days that we had planned for this year, beginning in March all the way through June, become regular school days. Further, I recommend that the March 20th date that was to be a professional development day for the staff now be a regular school day. I make these recommendations as follows. One is because we have 6 school days to make up for weather, and irrespective of what happens with the COVID-19 virus, that we are obligated to do. And the second thing is that the March 20th date was to be a really sad to say this, a very nice for educators professional development day. It has been canceled by the university, and therefore by extension for us, and we were not able to participate. I think given the other pressures on the school calendar, it makes sense at this time to make that a regular school day. This will, if we do not have any more snow, make the last student day June 12th and the last staff day June 15th. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I have met with the association, conferred with them. They've told their members, have talked to the principals and our admin team, and we think at this time, understanding that it's short notice for families, we get that, that we go forward with these modifications. Thank you.
May I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion that we accept the recommendation of the superintendent.
Second?
Moved and second. Discussion, folks. Second.
How many days is it making up? With using those half days and all that?
2. 3. I'm sorry, thank you.
3?
It's 3.
Okay.
And if I might, you had asked me earlier about reimbursable lunches, and I didn't know the answer to that, so I had to call Walter Beasley, who is the state director for school nutrition, and we will not be able to collect for the second early release days. In other words, by making up the early release days in the way that I've recommended, we can only claim lunch for once. I feel like I'm not articulating that well, but you only get 1 lunch claim. So we will lose approximately $2,400 because we'll lose for each of those early release days that we're making up, one reimbursable day.
Thank you for looking into that, too.
Any other questions?
I just,
Ms. Shumley?
because it is short notice and it's a change to this current year's calendar, what's the plan to notify our families?
It's a great question. If the school committee supports my recommendation, what I will do tomorrow is send out an alert with a letter that will also be on the school website, district website, to tell people what the changes are, what the last day of school is expected to be, with the caveat that this is, of course, assuming we have no more snow, which is a dangerous assumption if you've spent any time in Maine. So we'll see.
So true. Other questions? Mr. Petrosky?
If we took one of those 3 half-days and kept it the same, would we still lose $2,400 in lunch money?
Yes.
If we had nothing that day, just another comp day, a workshop day, then we wouldn't lose it. We wouldn't be supplying anything.
We have to supply lunch in order for it to be counted as a student day.
Okay.
So as Walter said to me quite nicely, we can only serve lunch once, Connie. And I said, what about if I send home a bag lunch? And he said, no. I said, what about if anyway, so he was pretty clear.
But you see what I'm saying is that we could save $2,400 if we didn't have any school at all. We would have no cost.
Right, but we would still have to make up the day.
But if you're adding so that we're only 1 behind right now, we've used 6. Okay, and we're gonna use 5.
Right.
Okay. And you're doing 3 days, aren't you? So you're gonna have an extra day in there, maybe.
Okay, which is so far.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm just trying to save 2,400.
If I gambled, I'd say there's a pretty good chance that we'll use at least another day.
I don't question that at all, but I'll bet a nickel. But my other thing, I was wondering about the cost factor involved with transportation. Does this increase our transportation cost by going to a full day versus a half day?
No, as a matter of fact, it's a great question. I called the transportation folks today, and I would like to negotiate 2 days or 3 days that they won't be driving, that they're not going to have to bus our kids, because we're not going to make those up at the end of the year. We're making them up as a half day instead.
Okay, that's good. I'll almost take the 24.
So
Any
we'll
other-
see what Scott has to say about that.
Thank you.
Any others? All in favor of the superintendent's recommendation? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we'll go into the budget workshop, and I already gave you my preamble. So here we go. Dr. Brown will go using the memo. She'll go article by article.
What's that? Thank you very much. As you've heard me say before, the budget is an iterative process. It's not static. And what I like to do about this time of the year is to take a snapshot and make any corrections that we've discovered along the way. We make mistakes, we forget things, things change, and at this point, we think we have probably the closest numbers that we can get to you for your adoption, hopefully next week, which is the 18th.
These need to go out.
Yes, those all need to go. Thank you. Give Ms. Dyken a minute to distribute those. So after I'm gone, one of the things that you'll remember is my fondness for paper, right, Amanda?
Yes.
So,
I'm going to remember you put it on both sides. That's a compliment. Okay.
thank you, Mr. Crosby. All right, so let's dive in here. So the changes to Article 1. We needed to correct an allied arts teacher because she had not been charged appropriately. And so we had to charge 13% of her salary to the middle school. That was around, and I round, so forgive me, I don't do 97 point, so it's around $9,800. We also, about this time, asked staff if they plan to change lanes, get a degree, and so on. We found one person who said yes, so we needed to add that in. We found an extra $4,000 in one of the grade school lines because it was also accommodated in Article 5. During one of the original presentations, I believe I told you that we moved conference and course money from Article 1 to Article 5. So, Jeff, you're $4,000 poorer than you were before, but that's okay. So the total changes to Article 1 are around $6,400. Article 2, which is special education, no changes. Article 4, initially we had removed a new club, which was called the Varsity Club, and the reduction didn't make it all the way through, so going back through with the fine comb, we found it and took it out. So that was a reduction of $1,345 to Article 4. Article 5 is no changes. Article 5 includes the library sciences, technology, health, etc., student support services. Article 6. This is something I would like the school committee to have some discussion around because I think it's in your favor if it would work. If there are funds remaining on your legal line this year, I recommend that you consider placing at least $10,000 of that on retainer with Drummond for the 2021 school year. I talked to Melissa Huey about this. It's not a completely novel concept. Other districts have done it. It's a way to hedge your bets if you think you'll need more than the 15 that you currently have budgeted without adding to that. And then you would, of course, draw on that retainer first before you touched your budget lines. I think you're going to have it. We budgeted 30 this year. We've used just over $1,000. We're not all the way to the end, but we're getting closer. So I think you will have resources to put on that line if you choose, in fact, to do that. So that's Article 6. Article 7 has been decreased by $3,000. You may recall the discussion last year at the board table regarding the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. The recommendation was to discontinue that membership. The board voted to do that, and we had missed the dues the first time through, so the second time through, we took them out. Article 8, which is transportation, no changes. Article 9, I'm recommending, I've met with 2 of the faculties, I think I shared with the school committee last year, that as part of the budget development process, I meet with each of the faculties. It's a voluntary meeting. We come, I give a presentation, and then I take feedback from the staff. And I've met with 2 so far, and the consensus has been that the maintenance position that I took out really needs to go back. So I have put it back in. We can have some more dialogue around that. I therefore took out some contracted services money that I had put in. And so the net increase to Article 9 is $33,551. Article 10, which is the debt service, and 11, which is as other, which are basically crossing guards, didn't change. SMP didn't change, and Delta didn't change. So as proposed, we are now at $12,445,858, which is an increase of $337,700, or 2.8% over the current school adopted budget. The budget increased roughly $35,000, almost $36,000, over the figures that I presented February 26, which was your first school committee workshop. The amount to be raised locally, which includes the additional $50,000 for the SNP program, is $7,171,742, and would go to $7,207,670, which represents a 4% increase, which is over the current $6,922,345. In closing, and these are my remarks, but I believe they're shared by many people who have helped prepare the budget. The budget accommodates more than $382,000 in salary and benefit increases. anticipates increases in busing, cleaning, and utility costs, and I believe responsibly maintains existing programs and services for students. And I look forward to a robust discussion with the school committee. Thank you.
Article 1. Thoughts about Article 1?
I think Article 1 reflects the needs of our schools, the additional staffing, and most of the increase in that article were negotiated increases that have to happen. So I am fine with Article 1 as proposed.
Thank you. Just remind me to make sure I have mine off. Mr. Petrosky.
One of the aspects of negotiations this year in particular, in regard to the regular teaching staff, has been to close the gap, not only with our neighbors, but in particular with the state of Maine, which is going to take and raise the minimum wage for teachers to $40,000. And although it won't hit us square in the eyes next year, if we hadn't tried to close the gap, the amount of money we'd have to raise is very, very significant. And I think we were trying to basically say we need to take this step so that we aren't, in a position where we can't afford to do it the next year or the year after. So it's not perfect, but I think the attempt is valiant. I think we supported that attempt. I think that's a good idea.
Thank you. My only question, and it goes generally, and I did present this to you before, is that I'm concerned about the last 3-year trend of lowering academic test grades by some of our folks. Does this budget support all that we need to have supported in order to start to change that descent? Yeah.
Directing to
Yes,
me?
yes, please.
I believe it does. I believe that the money in this budget, in Article 1 and Article 5, both speak directly to the need for teachers to dive in, whether that looks like summer work, curriculum work outside of the day, hiring subs, to really get under the hood, if you might, of what's going on in our curriculum and why those math scores in particular have been trending in the wrong direction. We've also, and of course, Mr. Campbell, we're going to add the NUIAs for 9th grade, is that right? Something new for next year?
PSATs in the 9th grade.
Thank you, the PSATs, that's something that will give us an additional data point for us to look at that we currently don't have.
Thank you. Other questions? Ms. Shumway.
I had asked about, in my previously, prior to the meeting, and I think it's most appropriate to talk about it under Article 1. There was the high school student survey of the additional offerings or areas that they would like to see. And so we've talked a lot about what they would like to see, and so I'm wondering if under this proposed budget and staffing model, what actually will be offered next year for our students?
Thank you.
I appreciate the heads up on the question. Whoop, that one's blank.
You are good, Mr. Campbell.
Well, no, boss. You're a good mind reader, good sheriff. Like every other one's blank.
You want me to do that?
Watch out for the cords down
Thank
there,
you.
too.
Yeah. We can't afford that.
I think you brought them in.
Mark, will you speak to your memo as well?
Sure.
And any costs?
Any cost? So, as you can see, we've actually added a number of electives. Did I give you a copy, Josh? Anybody else want a copy?
Hal, did you want a copy?
I'll wait, if you get an extra.
Let's see, I made 12. I think I did.
Thank you.
These were classes that were hit upon by students 10 or more times. That was my understanding of the magic number last year. English, as you can see, was the biggest addition. I noticed I missed one. There must be a description booklet, so I'll put that in there. As well as SAT prep, also indicated strongly they wanted SAT prep in math. So that should be under math electives. We also heard great interest in more dual enrollment opportunities. So we have teachers working with either KVCC or UMA to try to shore up the opportunity for students to earn high school credit as well as college credits. And as far as anything costing extra money, multimedia design may need some software rights. But if this one actually gets enough students to sign up for it and we offer it, I will look to use monies from this year to buy that software. It's be a little under $1,000.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have a quick one, just if I may. Can you give us a timeline for when student signups will take place?
So in my head, I was thinking that we were going to start Monday, but I understand that we need a little bit more time to prepare our video for the electives, so we're working on that. So I'm hoping toward the end of next week we actually do the signups. I want to get some advertising up to the students so they understand what's being offered and what the courses really mean. And that's Ms. Shaw doing that work for us.
Thank you. Questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Any further questions for Article 1? Or for the superintendent about Article 1? Moving on to Article 2, Special Ed. My only question about special ed would be that we've reduced the budget by 3 techs. How precarious do you feel?
Precarious, that's an interesting choice of words. Special education can be, in my experience over the decades as a superintendent, one of the most unpredictable areas to fund because kids move in, you don't know what their needs may be, kids move out, and in neither example you anticipated that was going to happen. So, as Lori knows, it's a shifting population. So we do our level best to guess. The population in Winthrop, unlike other places that Lori and I have been, is a little more constant than we have in, say, Auburn or when I was in Augusta. It's not quite as transient. So in terms of precariousness, I think we've got it as finely tuned as we can get it. I do not think there's any more capacity in special education going into 2021 to give up positions. Do I think it's adequately staffed for the current population? I do. If Mr. Hodgkin comes back to you in September and says we had a number of kids move in or we've got to place kids out, then I think you're going to have to deal with it at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
And I should give Laurie an opportunity to speak.
I would agree with Connie. On all the ones.
Thank you. Any other questions on Article 2? Seeing none, we'll move on to 4. Other instruction. Ms. Shumway.
So my question doesn't necessarily pertain to what's in the article, but it's more about the activity fee and the money that, or what that money is used for. And the reason why I'm asking, I know that there's a lot of, that Dr. Brown had indicated that a lot of most of the answers to my questions would come from the auditor after the audit was done. So I can be patient and wait, but the reason why I bring up the activity fee is because we bring in roughly the same amount of money each year. And the purpose of that was to offset what was in the article. And it seemed like at one point we thought that it was going to be used as a contingency fund, so if we didn't spend it each year, we would have it for a big project in the future, and then that, or with one auditor, wasn't allowed. So if the answer to the activity fee question from the auditor is that no, we cannot hold on to the money at the end of each year, that is going to be swept, that it can't be used as a contingency fund, then I would like to see that money be used in place of money being put in the article and be spent for items that are budgeted, and then have us use that money towards field maintenance that's badly needed, so on and so forth. Because we, as I know that Mr. Stonington isn't here this evening, but he did indicate during his presentation that there isn't any money in his article for field maintenance, or there isn't any money in the maintenance article for field maintenance. So to me, that seems like not the best decision, since our fields, we know right now, are not in a good state. I know we're doing the architectural study, but I don't want this to get lost, that that money isn't being used properly. I also am really liking the idea of putting aside a certain amount for a stipend. And I know that that is difficult to determine an exact amount because it is based on the contract, the teacher's contract, and the years of experience. But if there could be a certain amount of money that's set aside so that there is flexibility at the high school, middle school, if there's even grade school, if there's interest by the students to start a club, that it doesn't have to be on the good graces of someone volunteering for that. So if there is a way that our activity fee money could be set aside for something like that, I would like that.
Dr. Brown?
I think it's a fabulous idea. I think it's a conversation that I should have with the association, because there's no language, I don't think, Teresa, in the contract that speaks to new activities and what they're funded at. In other places I've been, there has been similar language like that. It's in the Augusta contract. So we can certainly take a look at that. And maybe you, with your contacts, can get that language and see what it looks like. But I think it's a fabulous idea.
And how are you treating the activity fees now?
It is unclear to me, given the prior auditor's position, exactly how they are treating the activity fund. And as I expressed to Mrs. Shumway via email, I'd really like to see what the new auditor says about that fund. What the starting balance is, because I'm not clear about what it is. And then I think the school committee should have some discussion around what should be the intent of that money. And I think, to your point of real capital improvements, it would go a long way. I would discourage you from using that money to do what I would call the routine business expenses of the school district, but things that would take a significant amount, then that seems like that would be a good purpose for that money.
That's what it was originally.
It's just, I don't know what go is at this point, where you're starting. So I would not be in a good position to say you have X amount, but hopefully the auditors will bring that forward next week when they present to you.
And that was my intent of bringing it up, because if our current auditors have the same position as our former auditor, that it is swept, then use it first, and then budget those items, then we would just have to pre-plan, you know, which maintenance items, so on and so forth, that we're going to be doing, rather than saving up like we wanted to for when something came in the future. If we're not able to do that, and we're going to collect it and not use it for its intent, then either let's not collect it anymore, or use it first and then use the money that we're budgeting for another need.
Right. Thank you. Village, Mr. Petrowski?
I have a question that would be on page 7 of 9, under Article 4, dealing with high school 912, compensation for coaches. And I first of all looked at line 63. And the reason why I looked at it, it caught my attention, was because we do have a request amount. We do have a difference amount dealing with FY '21 or 2021. But whereas in 1920, we have a budget amount, I don't know what we decided. I know I didn't decide it. What type of final amount we have in this budget, and how much of a percentage, I mean, how did you get to that?
I gotta make sure I understand your question.
Yeah, I know.
Well, my question is simply this, is that I looked at this and I said, well, there's the budget amount for FY '19. There's the amount that we spent, we run the budget. There's the budget amount for FY '20, which let's say is this year. I don't know, well, obviously you don't know because you haven't spent the year and everything. But then you have the requests for FY '21. Then you have the difference between the two. Is that what we've already accepted?
We as in the school committee?
Well, I don't think the school, yeah, I mean, we haven't even had a discussion about it.
So these are stipends driven by the collective bargaining agreement,
I understand that.
assuming that all of these ran. Sometimes, for if I use FY '19, not all of the clubs or co-currics or sports ran, and so there could be a difference between what we anticipated and then what actually ran. I think where Joel's not here, but the outing club is an example of that. I believe it's at the middle school.
So in the collective bargaining thing, and I don't remember this, did we decide a percentage that all of these stipends would increase?
It's based on the base salary.
It's based on the contract.
BA 0 is the, and then it goes into, there's a big matrix at the back of the CBA. And so you put in, so we negotiated an increase to step 1 or step 0. So that's the base salary that it's all based off of, and the calculator is based on years of experience and position, degree level, so on and so forth. So that's what's driving them, the current people in the position. So if someone changes, obviously, with a lot of experience steps down, then the stipend could be less. But then also if someone leaves and someone who's hired has more experience, it could be more. So this is just based on the people who were in the position last year and then the contractual increase. That's my assumption.
You said it beautifully. It's exactly right.
Well, and that's fine, except that the truth of the matter is that if we're accepting the higher figure that's listed here in the 4th column, and then we look at the difference, that's a pretty good percentage increase overall. I'll have to look at that formula. Okay. I'm not against them being paid, I just like to know how to figure it out, that's all. How do I explain this to people?
Give them the page from the collective bargaining agreement. It's a public document. I mean, Kristen said it beautifully. That's what drives all of these numbers.
Well, and this is a subject, it's a sore point with some people. It's not with me. I mean, I know how hard they work and everything, but it's just, I'm bringing it up because it is one that gets brought up in conversation. As to how much are you paying? How did you determine all of these things? And so it's not all wins and losses.
So the purview of the school committee is to decide what is offered. So you could look at the list and say, we're not going to offer, I would recommend this, unified basketball. We're going to cut that stipend. But you could not say, we're going to change the unified stipend to $1,000. That's not within your purview.
Okay.
And just furthermore, Joe, we talked about with, when the room has been packed before, about why can't we just have volunteer coaches? And we've had discussions, even last year, when we decided to add a second coach to each sport because of liability reasons.
And I agree.
So, yeah, so if we're going to have hired employees, which is the safest for our student athletes, for our students participating in any activity or club, then it is all driven by the collective bargaining agreement. And it's just, okay, so maybe overall it seems like a big increase, but if you look at the amount of time that is put in, that our stipends are rather low for a high school level. I'm just thinking about the amount of time my JV son put into basketball, and the coaches are there.
Well, I think that's one of the things I'd love to have in our hands is a comparison to what other schools are paying our size, or can't really do it by school size. You have to do it by municipality or school district size. If you really think about it, that can make a big difference. But it's okay. None of these are out of hand. It was just the way this was written. I said, I think it creates some question.
So would remind you that you are negotiating this package next year. You're in Mrs. Shumway, so we'll add this to the file for these things to remember.
I might give more money.
Any more? Moving on to Article 5, student and staff support. Our two nurses one on either campus has worked out well this year.
I think so. I'd ask Mr. Lab, what do you think? How did two nurses work out?
We're happy as kids.
Mr. Campbell?
We're always happy at the high school.
So I have to tell this story. I'm sorry. This is someone brought up the nurses. So today, I brought Ted's car because Ted has my car so he can take Emma to go get prom dress because I have a meeting tonight. This is the only night she has. So I go to the high school for the presentation, their annual meeting, their weekly meeting, and I park in the school nurses parking lot. And I came out to a thing on my windshield that says very nicely, "Do not park in the school nurses' place. Please use another spot." And so I called Jeannie and I said, "Jeannie, did you realize it was me?" And she said, "Well, Connie, no one's above the law."
Any other comments on 5?
I'll just make the, just because, that in this article is where we have the changes to the technology I noticed, and that is one, like a technology supervisor and one technology ed tech. So that's in this article, and part of the increase decrease because the 3 ed techs, one for each individual building, was removed.
Correct. Any others? Moving along, Article 6. Board of Ed and Central Office.
Do you want to have some dialogue around putting a retainer in place for 2021?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay, so that's the consensus?
Yes, Kristen?
Yeah.
Yes, Joe?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, especially because I know that Dr. Brown says that I'm going to be negotiating next year, but I mean, I'm up for re-election, so who knows what will happen. So if we have a change in that negotiations team, it's going to be tricky negotiating that contract with experience anyways, because we have to do the increase to the minimum salary.
Right.
So we may need to rely on Drummond's support more anyways, but then it also, that if there's change in positions and experience, then it would be nice to have a cushion, I think.
Yes, good, okay, thank you. 7, anything more on 6?
Would you want to vote to that since it's an addition to the budget?
It's not an addition, it's in the current budget year that we're already in.
If there's
That's
anything,
right.
if there's anything
Yeah,
left
if there's
over.
anything left over. Oh, shoot.
What? After you spray it over. Article 7, school administration. Article 8,
My only question on this article is, I know that we're waiting on the bids for the contract. So how is that going to change this article or potentially change this article? Especially if we looked at different models of the transportation company owning our buses versus leasing them. So I'm just wondering if how, obviously we have placeholders in this budget, but if the model was to drastically change, how would that affect this line?
In a perfect world, it would go down. Not to be facetious about that, I've estimated a 5% increase for transportation. If we get a bid and the bidder is interested in buying our fleet and will give us a credit, either in the first year or over the contract, then hopefully that would depress the need to raise additional local funds. The opposite could also be true. There's a lot of pressure right now on wages in transportation companies, and I would anticipate that's going to be an issue in this contract as well. 5% may not be enough, and I won't know until the 30th, but I think at this point in your budget development, you have a good guesstimate of what you need on that line.
thank you. Any other questions? 9, facilities and maintenance. Everybody happy with the change?
Yes.
Okay.
In this article, so I support the change going back to the current model. I feel that if restructuring was going to be needed, it would come after we decide what's happening with the building. It's like if we're going to end up building a new building and having one campus, then the discussion is for that. But since we have such an aging building, it did make me a little nervous making a change, although it was convenient having a retirement, of course, to do that. So I completely understood the thought process and appreciate trying to manage the overall increase. In the grade school budget, I saw specific maintenance work that was planned. I didn't see that for the other 2 buildings. So I'm just wondering if there are specific things that are going to be planned to be done that's encapsulated in this article that I just maybe didn't pick up.
Bear with me while I flip to that particular page. I know at the middle school, she's talked about painting. She's talked about petitions and repairs to the downstairs bathrooms. And while I find Karen's list. Mark, while I'm looking, do you want to speak to any of the high school needs?
We actually didn't have any major needs. We just general maintenance.
I agree with Kristen, I didn't see any middle school ones under the notes. There were plenty of grade school ones.
So to my knowledge, it's painting, petition repair, there are any significant projects
She
anticipated.
she withdrew a carpet.
It's line 108 in Article 9.
Say again?
Line 108 is the middle school list.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See, aren't you glad you came?
Yes.
I
I just have it in my hand, open today. Is that-
It is in there, so,
There it
because
is.
I was gonna,
On page 6 in Article 9.
yep, yep, yep.
Thank you, Amanda.
Feel better?
Okay, got it.
Okay. Because I was gonna, I did agree with you. Anything else? Article 10, debt service. Just a point of clarification. I think it's like after 2022, we should have the high school paid off, but that won't mean any additional funds for our school system. Those funds are all just taken right off the top of the ED 279. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes.
Yeah,
For debt service.
for debt service, yeah. And all other expenditures, Article 11, I don't think we'll have too much discussion about the crossing guard. Okay. Adult ed.
We can go back.
Any thoughts, questions, needs for clarification on adult ed? We're just in a better place than we were 2 years ago, thank you.
Yes, we are. We appreciate it. Done a nice job.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone. We don't have any food service. But I know food service.
SMP didn't change, so that's the same as it was presented from February.
So my only question about food service then, is everybody okay with going to food service? SMP? My only question was, in your original memorandum, you suggested that out of the 50,000 increase, that 10.9 of it be put into a capital improvement fund and begin replacing broken and broken equipment. So when we have any extra money and we wanted to put it into a capital improvement fund, it's gotten swept. And we've been told that it's because we have a debt to the town. And as long as we have a debt to the town, it will be swept. Is SMP a whole different ballgame in putting together a capital improvement fund because it's an enterprise account? Is it different? It doesn't have that same ruling that anything you might want to try to say for future substantial equipment will not be swept?
I think this is a better question for the auditors. I am not sure how the new audit firm would treat what could be considered a sinking fund, which is a sinking fund for the audience is one where you put in enough money every year, it sinks, and then it reaches what you think you need to replace capital equipment. Aaron, you probably have $10,000 of capital equipment need today, if I asked you. So I don't think there's any danger that you're going to lose your money. One of the challenges that Aaron's had this year as we work through this is that the dishwasher goes or it needs to be replaced. We have refrigeration issues here at the grade school. Even if the auditor said you would sweep that, I think we could easily find that amount of money, the need for that amount of money. Aaron's done a terrific job. I think I've briefed you before on, in the year that we're in, getting rid of broken equipment, replacing it with new stuff, cleaning out things that have not the best shape, trading it, selling it wherever we can. But we do have equipment that's pretty dated. And how old's your van, Aaron? Do you know?
I don't know what year it is, but I don't want to drive it. I'm glad she doesn't mind. I'd rather use my own car to transport stuff. Thank you.
So I think in the very near term, you're going to be facing replacing the district SMP van.
We also have, like she said, you know, a dishwasher would be great. We have so much equipment that is just being held together with, you know, a wish and a prayer, that you could have major things happen in 2 different schools in the same day. That you just can't predict. You know, a refrigerator goes out, you lose a ton of stock. A dishwasher goes out, you're using paper products until you can buy another one. You can't predict with equipment this old how long it's going to last and when its last day is going to be.
Erin, I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you ballpark replacement cost for a dishwasher at, say, the middle school?
I would say between $25,000 and $40,000. And I've also had looked into outdoor walk-in for the grade school. The reason why I put it off is I was waiting to find out what we're actually going to do with the building, because it makes no sense to put in a walk-in. But right now, as you probably all know, there's all these little refrigerators lined up in the dining room, which takes up a lot of space and makes it hard to hear in that room because they're always running. And anybody in the kitchen has to go through the crowd of kids to get anything. So we had the idea of putting a walk-in outside the back door so they could easily access all of their food in one place. And not counting the physical construction of like digging and pouring concrete, etc., it would probably be $40,000 just for the walk-in itself. That's without any shelving or anything else. So all of those numbers seem like they're too big to even put into a school with this age. But we're all of these things. We had one day we had a refrigerator go out and lost our entire week's worth of milk overnight. It was up to 90 degrees. So you just can't predict when that's going to happen.
Thank you, by the way, for the maintenance inventory and what people think about what condition that equipment is in.
You're welcome.
I like that.
Which, as a reminder, we're going to have a yard sale sometime this spring and sell our equipment, say that rather loosely, that might be valuable to somebody else. So I haven't set a date for that yet. It's on my list of things to do, probably sometime mid-May.
Did we trade in the old truck?
No, it's going to have a yard sale sticker on it.
It's good for potted plants.
Can I ask you a
The
question? This is just getting off the subject a little bit, but fits into Aaron and this whole question of money for the budget. When I was over to St. Mary's today and got into a conversation, and it was about this massive change they've made internally to get away from permanent utensils, glasses, plates, everything's going to paper or something else. And somebody had brought up saying a lot of money being spent on this because, like for instance, they used to use the regular metal silver. Now it was all plastic and being destroyed. Are you thinking that way in terms of, well, maybe somebody's talking to you about what are you going to have to do here? This thing keeps going.
You mean if the dishwasher breaks?
No, I mean if the virus, the corona, okay, issue attacks us, are they advising you to get rid of and stop washing, just throw it away?
No. That's, I think with the temperature and the chemicals in the dish machines, it's not a concern. I'd be a lot more concerned about, a kid grabbing a fork and touching, 12 forks when they grab one. You might have to take into consideration that type of thing. But if you have a bunch of plastic forks, unless you're going to individually wrap a plastic fork, and then you're going to have someone open it for the kids.
That's what they're doing.
So yeah, it's not going to improve anything. Having plastic or disposable stuff doesn't really change the transmission of the virus.
Yes, Josh.
Sorry, since we're on utensils and whatnot, I was early in the year, I had idea, not really, it's biodegradable / compostable utensils. I just wanted to know what are the steps to getting towards that, I don't know if that would affect like our little SMP. I don't know if we're going to the SMP line or, I don't know, just to make it better. Because right now we've been using, I noticed that we switched from metal to plastic or whatever, and I noticed that we go through a lot of it per year, but I was just wondering like how we could make that switch, I guess.
I've experienced this in a previous school where they went to everything compostable. The problem is that you have to have either a trash removal company that's gonna compost it or a composting station yourself. So if somebody wanted to, you know, build a big compostable station down, you know, behind the high school and we separated all our compostable products to that, that would make sense. But what my previous school did is they spent the money on the compostables but didn't compost it. So you're really not doing anything. You know, it's going into a landfill inside a plastic bag. So it doesn't really say anything. But compostable plates, silverware, et cetera, are about 3 times the cost of the other ones that we're using. We have tried to get away from styrofoam wherever possible and use like paper boats and paper plates and stuff. These things do break down better. But, and we try to limit, you know, to-go containers like only to the CATSI kids because they have to leave, that type of thing. But for the most part, people put the cart before the horse. They don't get the composting station first, which would be the very first step. And you also have to take into consideration that this stuff doesn't just break down in air. You don't like just set it in a pile in the yard and it composts. You have to have other things added to it, like, you know, manure and hay. There's all these, it's like a very complicated chemical equation to get the stuff to break down. So that would be the first thing that the school would have to do, is to come up with that, and then we could buy the products and add it to it.
So I guess I need like a student-driven high school composting club. I know we had a horticulture class last year and we did pretty well on our composting. But I know that's not going to be a class offered, but I have a few students that were interested in starting one, but I guess I have to go closer in the composting club first. Yeah. Thank you. Sure.
You all set, Josh? Anything else?
Well, no, I just want to make sure before we leave SMP that the school committee is comfortable with the additional $50,000 in local funds as a request to the town council.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess the question is everyone comfortable at the end of this exercise sending the superintendent off to go ahead and write the articles as presented this evening?
Yes.
Because we're not going to nickel and dime it next time when we vote on it. Okay?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else on this agenda? So the next meeting is the 18th. And that's are we having the audit presentation?
I hope so.
So it's yes, no, yes, no, yes. And we won't have to have any more budget discussion. Correct?
Correct? Yep.
Okay, so then the next time will be, our next meeting will be April. Hi, Mr. West.
How are you, madam?
Wicked well, thank you. Our next meeting will be then, our next meeting will be next week on the 18th, but then we'll actually vote on the budget April 1st. Yes?
No, May 8th, March 18th, next week you actually vote on
March.
articles.
Okay. So that's going to be a business meeting,
Yes.
because it says workshop here. Okay. A little confused.
Did know how much you get from tonight.
This group. All right, I think I'm ready for, to hear an adjournment.
Move to adjourn? Second.
Second, okay, all in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you very much.